Hey guys, it's Funkin Matt, and today I'm going to show you how I made my track Juncture, which is out now on Future House Music. I'm going to show you how I made the bass, the synths, the drums, and also how I did the mastering. Okay, so the most important elements in this track are the drums, the bass, and the main synths. The arrangement here looks a bit odd. That's because I usually do the radio edit afterwards and the main version up front. So it's in the same project, but it's just two different arrangements, although they're basically the same, just with an outro and an intro. The reason I do it like that is just to have so I don't have to have two different projects with different processing, and if I suddenly do a change I have to use two projects, so I just do it in the same project. So the most important elements in this track are the bass, the synth, and the drums. So let's start with the drums on this one, because the drums are quite simple actually. We have it here, let me check. Super simple as it gets actually. 4 to the floor, hi-hat, clap. It's a bit of layering on the snare, so it's this snare with clap, hi-hat, offbeat, another layer on the clap, and a kick. Yeah, so pretty normal stuff. The kick is a kick I've used before. And it's basically no other processing other than that I'm kind of shortening it and filtering it a bit just to get that high end off it to get a bit more. I'm not too fond of super high end material in kicks. And also the tail here is chopped a bit off just with this kickstart tool. That's just to make more room for the bass line, which comes later. So this is in the intro, but I'm pretty sure the drums are quite simple in the drop as well. Yeah, just the same. Nothing big going on in the drums. I have some extra parts on this bus, I think. That's a snare. And the snare is the part of this drum loop that actually makes the groove. So all the other elements without the snare are super straight, but this snare that comes here is kind of the element in the drum that makes it swing. So that's the only element on this beat actually. That's not like totally on grid. Let's just mute the synth as well and the bass. Another shaker as well. So nothing much happening in the drums here. Super standard 4 to the floor beat with a bit of shuffling snare. So let's go further on to the bass, which I think I did quite a lot more with. So let's just check it here. I'm gonna solve this channel. So this is the main bass line we have in this track, and it's a Serum synth. Usually I don't use Serum that much, but in this track I used it on both the main lead and also the bass. I'm not sure why, but I think it was because I was reaching for something a bit more digital and colder, and I think Serum works great for those kind of sounds. So this bass has a lot of processing going on, so I'm just gonna mute the parallel channel and the processing going on the bass line, so you can hear the sound itself. So it should be something like this. So this is just kind of like when you make a Reese bass line and you put one oscillator down one octave and then you put the other one on top so you can hear the first. Yeah, so basically like a square, although it said sine here. I don't know why, but sounds like a square to me. And then I put another one octave above, and then I put the fine tune out. So that gives the synth some movement, because they are working off each other to make this Reese bass-ish kind of vibe, if you know what I mean. If you put down the fine tune, it would sound like this. Very straight. But with the fine tune, it sounds more... Yeah, it moves. So with the processing, it's quite a lot, so I'll just bring in one element at a time. So I started with the Pro Q3, and here I did this. I'm hollowing out the low mids from 100 to 300 because I wanted that hollow bass feel, really. Nothing more to say about that. You can hear... I wanted that away. I wanted to have more this gritty sound, to have more high end and more low. So I just chopped out a bunch of the mids. I also did 10 dBs of cut at 700. So without these cuts, it would sound like this. With. So that's to me, that makes it sound more aggressive and yeah, and hollow. And the next thing is a shaper box. So this is just like a side chain, which ducks for the kick, but the lows and the highs and the mids duck at a bit different timings. So the lowest low have more ducking than the highs. So next up we have all of this as well. So let me just bring that in. It sounds like this. Before. Yeah, so that's a lot. It's a bit crusher, and it's also some more EQ to get even more of the gritty highs, and I cut away some more of the bass, and then I also compressed it and added tons of high end to it. So without the compressor, it's like this. So this is quite a lot of processing, and yeah, usually I maybe wouldn't do this much, but this is more like a creative kind of processing. I wouldn't do this on somebody else's mix or something. It's like the producing part of it. And the Decimort, which I love, it's without. Not as big of a change. It's more to get it a bit more aggressive in a way, to get more a bit more beef, if you can hear it. A bit less edgy in the top, but more like beefy in the rest of the signal. And at last, it's a Q3, which I use only for automation, not for like the processing of it. And finally, it's a reverb, but it's only on 1%, so you can't really hear it actually. It's super minor, but a lot of times I do like 1% or 2, 3, 4% on tracks you wouldn't really think had reverb on them. It's more just to sometimes it's often to create a bit of space on elements, even on basses, that you wouldn't really think about, but it's more like a mix thing. But this time I think it was actually used for automation, and then I didn't end up using the automation, and I just kept 1%. I'm not sure. I could probably just delete that. So after all this, we also have this parallel channel, which sounds like this. So this is a chorus and a massive EQ, like a bandpass filter around 200, and this is just to fill out the part which you can remember I cut out previously, And this might sound a bit odd to cut it out first, then add it later. But that was to get a feeling of depth around 200 in a weird way, like that it's a bit broader here, but it's still hollow, but it's a bit broader and deeper just here. It's a weird thing to do, but I think it sounds quite good actually on this synth. You could hear it without, like I could shuffle. Remove this. This is how it would have sounded without. So I do this cut, and then I add this, which is in the sides, but not much. So it's still like this cut, but it fills it out a bit more in the sides, and that's just because I like to play with width and depth in tracks. And I'm not super fan of these super wide basses as well. And also in the next part we're going to look at the synths, and here we are kind of wide, so that makes sense to have the bass quite mono if your synths are quite wide, just to like space everything out and use the space you have available. So let's look at the synths. We can take a look at the drop synths first. So it's like this. Super happy vibes. I was probably quite happy when I made this track. So the first one of these is this one. How you make this is basically just a saw wave, and then you use your LFO with a pitch modulation on your fine tune. So without it would sound like this. Basic sawtooth or fat saw, which is called here. So then you increase it, you get this Euro dance super happy modulation, which I layered with this not this one, but let me check this one. And this is Serum again, kind of a super saw-ish kind of thing, 16 unison saw with a sub, noisy synth, nothing special, just. And also here I've removed quite a lot of the mids and increased the sides on the highs. So this is just like to get maximum energy out of the synth. So together they sound like this. So this is mainly the mono element, and this is mainly like the side element. So that's the way they work together. And both are side chained with this Nicky Romero plugin called Kickstart. So just a basic LFO2 like the other one I use as well, the curve shaper thing. So there's also a bunch of synths which comes before these. So these are the drop synths, and together it sounds like this. And also interestingly, you can hear the bass. Even though I cut a lot out in the mids, you can still hear that the bass line really comes through a lot in the drop. And since I also removed quite a lot of the mids from the main synth, you can hear the bass even clearer through the mids. I like to try and mix in a way that you almost get the feeling that if you would mute the other channels, you could still hear each element really clear. Obviously, you can't hear them as clear. That would sound pretty sterile. They need to have some interaction, but I like to create these pockets of sound throughout. So like the bass has its spot in the middle, and the synths has their spot in the sides, but also in the middle, but higher up, and so on. So let's check out the synths in the break as well. Let me see. So first it's an Omnisphere synth. yeah, this is just like a string omnisphere thing, playing the same melody over and over again. But this is more important for the track, and this is the part that leads into what becomes the melody. So the teaser kind of, which comes in the intro and then grows towards the drop. And this is not the same synths as I use in the drop, so it's really important for me, if I want to have the drop be not that different, that since I've used different sounds in the break and the drop, that they at least play the same melody. And usually I would use more of the drop synth in the break as well to create more of like a coherence in the sound. But I think it worked out good in this track to just have separate synths in the break and in the drop. So I should have another synth which layers on top of this. So that was a basic square synth, and this is saw. And same again, this the square one is more in the middle, and the saw one is more in the sides, and they do the same thing. But this one plays in the sides and higher up. And it's kind of hidden a bit in the back as well, but it's just to create lusher, wider, bigger sound. But I'm not so fond of using stereo wideners or stuff to like artificially widen stuff. So I keep some elements super wide, some elements very mono, and I use panning, like automated panning and stuff for everything else. Mostly, at least, to keep not have so many phasing issues and keep it solid. So yeah, and there's also a vocal here, which is just like this. I don't know where to go, and I don't know where to go, and I don't know. Yeah, just cut out the bottom and also the top to make it smoother, and a bit compression. I don't know where to go. Mostly in the mids, and also some in the low end here. It's just to like even it out. This is just a sample from Splice, probably. Not sure, but yeah, probably from Splice. Minor processing on this one, as it was kind of already quite a lot processed. So together with like the FX and everything, it should sound like this. For the FX on the build, it's quite simple. It's some different risers, some which I made myself. The Moog one I made myself, and also some old stuff like this riser I made like a lot of years ago, just to get like a tone. And I like to keep the risers and everything quite low in the mix, and also quite in the sides, just to give it some energy. But I don't want the energy of the track to come from the risers or the FX. So usually I do like the FX in the end, after the track is kind of already done. And so I feel the energy should come from the melodies and the filtering and like how you build the track, and not so much from the FX. So that's basically it. So let's just check a bit on like the mastering part of it. It's not really complicated. I don't like to do a lot on my master. Usually I don't use this. I actually use a compressor, a hardware compressor, which I have from Rupert & Neve, which is really good. But sometimes on this track, which I started to make at home during the lockdown, I was just on my laptop, so I had to use an in-the-box compressor, and I used this one. So I can just show you my settings for this. Very standard 4:1 ratio, max attack, shortest release, which I always do on these kind of compressors. I have the sidechain filter on to filter out the heaviest bass so it doesn't pump too much. And then I just did the threshold so it doesn't pump like... It's like 1 dB, and maybe some places a bit more, but more than that I feel it sounds congested. So this is usually how I would do it on any bus compressor actually. And then I have this EQ. Slicing out a bit around 500, monoing a bit more below 200 like this. Low cutting below 18 Hz, 12 dBs. A bit of high-end boost in the sides and a bit of cut in the mids, just to make it a bit airier on the sides and a bit less harsh in the mids. These are all very minor cuts. It's like, yeah, you can see it. It's not like a dB or anything. It's like half a dB down here, half a dB up. Then I have the Wise DS, which is just deharshing it a bit. Quite a bit actually. It's removing some nastiness around, I'm not sure, yeah, 5,000, which is usually like a place where a lot of club music can sound quite harsh. And then also in the top from, yeah, about 7,000 upwards, just to tame, since this track has a lot of like nasty high end in like digital synths and hi-hats and everything, so I'm just taming it down a bit. And then it's a clipper, which is doing almost nothing. So it's just catching the odd peak here and there and didn't actually catch anything here. So it's probably for like the second drop or something. And limiting. Yeah, max 3 dBs of limiting here just to get up to like a decent volume. I don't like to make my masters super loud. I like them to be like loud enough to don't sound weird in the DJ set, but like I like to keep most of the dynamics if I can. But it does sound a bit off if say like one of the big EDM DJs are playing your track and they aren't like they aren't using the volume on their mixer. And if your track sounds super low, that's not good. So you still have to have like an okay volume at least. But I prefer to not do too much on limiting. I also have another limiter after that one. So this has the true peak limiting on. It's not doing any gain. So this is just catching those interpeaks from that can happen between samples and stuff, and it has oversampling on, so it just catches like the odd peaks that the first one doesn't catch. So there we have it, guys. That was how I made Juncture. It's out now on Spotify, on Future House Music, so do check it out and let me know in the comments if you like it or not. So see you around.